I do my skincare and some amount of makeup shopping every 3 months. And last weekend, I got my products delivered to me. In a podcast version of Come See Me Unpack My Beauty Haul, let me tell you what I got. So there's the Evergreen Estee Lauder Advanced Night Repair Serum, The Ordinary's Salicylic Acid and Niacinamide Acid, Olay's Everyday Moisturizer, Laneige Lip Sleeping Mask, and the Body Shop's Shea Butter Hand Cream. Yeah, good skincare does not come cheap. As a millennial who learned most of her makeup skills watching YouTube videos back when I was a teenager, and someone who loves being connected to the digital world always thanks to smartphones, social media, OTT, and so many other things, the consumption of beauty and skincare products is an evolution I have literally lived. Most millennials listening in would remember in the early 2000s, before Nykaa came into existence, if you had to buy a premium makeup brand, let's say MAC, and you wanted to get your favorite lipstick, MAC Ruby Woo, or a perfume, say Chanel No. 5, you only had 3 options: shop or stop, if you were a middle-class kid like me, or if you were very, very lucky, you would have a rich friend or an NRI cousin who will pick up your favorite product from the duty-free store or the country that they're coming from. We have come a long way since then. With increased disposable income, Indian women are experimenting with new product categories, and they're spoiled for choices between a rapidly growing number of homegrown and international premium brands in India. And the rise of this consumer demand, initiated by the poster boy of e-commerce beauty, Nykaa, has resulted in consumer retailers and brands to focus on this category too. First, we had Shop or Stop. Then Sephora entered India in 2012. The same year, we saw Nykaa being launched as well. And then came Purple.com. Large consumer companies are also eyeing this category. E-commerce giants such as Amazon Beauty and Myntra Beauty are not far behind. Then there are the new age D2C brands, and we also have legacy conglomerates like Tata Click enter the beauty space with Tata Click Palette. And as if so many players wasn't crowded enough, last month, Reliance Retail also decided to foray into the beauty retail market of the country. The company launched its mammoth-sized store, Tira, in Mumbai. But all is not well with beauty and personal care retail market of India. I mean, Mamaearth pulled back its IPO plans after being under the limelight about its $3 billion valuation. Similarly, Nykaa of late has been in the news for all the wrong reasons, with its less than impressive performance in the stock markets and multiple senior executive exits. And yet, here we are, with Reliance betting big on beauty. What is making beauty retail business, especially premium beauty retail, so lucrative in India? Is it just repeat consumption? Or is it a newfound love for beauty that Indian consumers and retailers seem to have developed? Let's find out. You are listening to The Morning Brief. I'm your host, Shauburi Das, and this Friday we dig deep into the growing beauty retail battle of the country. In order to understand the beauty retail market better, we decided to speak to those who run that business. Dharmarajan K. from Tata Click, Biju Kasim, President Beauty of Shop or Stop, and an investor betting big on this category. Arjun Anand, Managing Director of Whirl Invest, a consumer goods investment company, and Arvind Singhal, founder of consumer tracking firm Technopack Advisors. But when did this start? When did beauty as a category become relevant? Well, let's go back a little bit. Here's Arvind Singhal of Technopack Advisors.
What is changing over the last 10, 15 years is consumers, and especially women, many of whom are actually earning their own income in some form or another for the very first time in their lives. And there could be not only just in big cities, there could be in smaller cities, there could even be in larger villages as such, or rural areas. They are the ones who are driving the aspiration and therefore the growth of especially the skin and beauty market as such. But that is where the penetration of traditional retail becomes very, very important. Large format, organized physical retail, online retail, and traditional retail. I don't see much of a significant change between the share of these three channels simply because all of them are addressing a larger group of customers.
The $20 billion beauty and personal care industry has literally blown up in the last 5 years, and it has rapidly evolved. Traditionally, soaps, body care, oral hygiene products, stuff we bought with our daily groceries, have contributed to the largest chunk of the industry's revenues. Now, Indians are actively trying out serums, peels, and toners. Why? Awareness. A massive chunk of social media content is videos on DIY skincare and beauty routines. Videos on YouTube and Instagram will now teach you the benefits of salicylic acids, AHA, BHA peels, and niacinamide.
Have you been searching for the perfect custom DIY face mask for your skin type and skin concern? Get ready for this because we're taking you on a choose your own face mask adventure.
सिंपल इंग्रेडिएंट्स आपके किचन से मात्र 7 दिन लगातार करने हैं और फिर देखिए मैजिक।
इतना सब केमिकल्स यूज करने के बाद मैं चाहती थी मैं कुछ नेचुरल यूज करूं। So let's go for it.
Are you guys here for my DIY skincare routine? Okay, come on.
Self-love and self-care are things millennials and Gen Z have really taken to. They have upped their beauty game, and how? And brands are reaping the benefits. Out of the total sales of BPC, 75% still comes from kiranas, and the remaining 25% comes from e-commerce marketplaces, think Nykaa and Purple.com, beauty specialists such as Sephora, department stores such as Shopper Stop, and of course, the new age D2C channel driven by the likes of Sugar Cosmetics and Mamaearth. Sure, the premium beauty market of India contributes a thin sliver of the total beauty and personal care sales of the country. The remainder of the sector is generated by mass and masstige brands. In fact, our per capita beauty consumption is 1/10 of our neighboring countries and 100th of the West. But while mass beauty and personal care is expected to grow at 8% during 2023 to 2026, premium beauty and personal care is expected to grow at almost 14% during that same period. Beauty has suddenly become that hot cake product that every retailer wants a piece of. The two things that make the category extremely lucrative are the frequency of repeat purchase and the average order values of the category. And the focus area of these new retailers seem to be the offline market. Nykaa, the poster boy for beauty retail in India, currently has 135 outlets already. The company plans to expand this number further. Similarly, Sugar Cosmetics, which was a D2C first brand, generated nearly 55% of its revenue from the offline channel last year. Every single retailer is trying to make their presence felt across the brick and mortar channel.
These have been the stores which attract tens of millions of walk-ins every year. And most of them are therefore able to look at the products, look at the various sales counters of various brands. In some cases, talk to sales staff which can actually answer questions for them. In many cases, use variety of applications or applicators to test some of these products out. So in that context, physical retail, especially the likes of Shopper Stop, Lifestyle, have played a significant role in evolution of Indian consumer, especially the first-time Indian consumer for these products.
Beauty as a retail category attracts a lot of footfalls into the store. In addition, it has a very high average transaction value per square foot, which is a standard metric to check the success of any retail outlet. Transactions per square foot means real estate is really important in the economics of offline retail. And why not? Scale is critical to offline retail, and scale means more real estate. Good premium real estate in India costs a pretty penny, and premium beauty retail requires exactly that, large real estate. Reliance's Tira at the Bandra Kula complex stands tall at 4,300 square feet in size. It is one of the largest beauty specialist retailers in the country. Arvind says the demand and growth of the markets will push players like Tira to scale up further and faster than its predecessors have.
Historically, the growth may have been impacted by a relatively smaller size of the market, relatively smaller base of consumers, relatively poor availability of physical space, and so on and so forth. I would only look into the next 10 years. There is no reason to believe, especially in case of Tira, to not being present at least in 200 cities in India, if not more, and probably having not less than 500 retail outlets, if not more. So growth potential for Tira and Tira's equivalent formats is much more optimistic, encouraging compared to a lifestyle or a shopper stop.
Understanding the beauty business requires a deeper understanding of the online and offline businesses. For a consumer to go from being a beauty aspirant to a beauty enthusiast, a retailer needs to provide that perfect blend of first-time shopping experience combined with the availability of multiple retail channels for the same consumer to become a repeat shopper. Omni-channel is the only way forward. A retailer is truly considered an omni-channel player when the process of buying is seamless irrespective of the channel of purchase. While a physical store might help rope in the first-time consumer, the online channel helps to make them a repeat consumer. Offline channels typically mean higher average revenues and margins for a player than online. But the lines between the two are now blurring because of consumer demands. To understand these different channels of beauty retail better, we decided to turn to the oldest premium beauty retailer of the country, Shoppers Stop. I asked Biju how this whole balance between online and offline works for Shoppers Stop.
Look, to put things in perspective, and you touched upon, we are actually the largest brick and mortar prestige beauty player in the country. When did we start to hear this online ecosystem? It's very recent, right? While the West have had this phenomenon in the last 15 or 20 odd years, I think India, it started fairly late. So it is a combination. We believe at Shoppers Stop, and I think that is a global perspective, we believe in the omni-channel approach. So today, yes, the convenience is at the core of it. The customer experience is at the core of it. And we are here to delight our customers. So objectively, we welcome the customer to start the journey online, offline, and end online, offline. So we are quite comfortable in this journey.
What, according to you, are the primary challenges of running an offline retail beauty specialist outlet in India?
The inherent challenges in brick and mortar is largely the high, let's say, OPEX and CAPEX. Beauty real estate is normally high on rentals. So in order to make break evens, it is not as easy as any other mass market or mass segment business is. Volumes are still fairly low. Technically, a counter, hypothetically, in, let's say, Indonesia, a country with similar demographics, assuming that if they do, let's say, $100,000 in one particular location, India is probably at $10,000 to $15,000. So first and foremost for me, the beauty retail needs to have fairly better consumption. And hopefully with consumption coming, we should be able to see less challenges in the brick and mortar space.
Could you tell us, for a successful offline retail outlet, what percentage of the total expenses is the rentals generally? Like how much it should be?
So basically, it could be anywhere between 8 to 12%, and it can be as high as about 20%, depending on the size of the store, depending on the density of shopping within a mall. So if I look at the best malls in the country, it can be as high as 25%. So, that's the reason why I meant to say that it is not appropriate. But look, global standards, 8 to 12% is global standards. I think India has got a long way to go before we reach to that levels. So that is the reason why it is a tough proposition. And every retailer finds it very difficult to crack the rental side of the story.
How do you think the beauty retail war is going to pan out from here on now that Reliance has entered the space?
Look, again, I will really not want to compare or use the word war. I think it's going to be healthy competition. The fact of the matter, there are n number of new brands coming into the country, right? So if you look at it from last year to this year, in the last 12 months, there would be at least 15 to 20 powerful brands that have come into the country. And I can tell you, we still have many, many brands that are still not in the country. So all the new brands is going to bring in new businesses.
Would you say that the offline business for beauty is a more profitable business in terms of unit economics as opposed to the online business?
Not necessarily. There are models, there are brands that do quite well online. And basically, if you look at the setup cost, I think online is much leaner because there is no space, there's no rentals, there's no people, there's no tester stands, and there's no many, many things, right? Which is actually a starting point when it comes to offline.
Private labels are a big focus point for some of these offline beauty retailers. Like Sephora, the retailer generates nearly 17 to 18% of its total revenue in India from its private labels. The average order value, or AOV, of the retailer in the country is 6,000 rupees, which is literally the highest amongst all beauty retailers in India as of now. In addition to that, Indian retailers, online or offline, still are not tapping into the private labels yet. Sephora generates revenues worth 170 to 200 rupees per square feet. This is a very high number in India. So, I asked Biju, what is the private label beauty strategy for Shoppers Stop?
Private label for any retail system is important. We also have a private label ambition within beauty. We have a brand by name Arcelia, which is actually a private label brand. We are also working on a couple of new private label options. And we have a very, I would say, fairly ambitious plan, but not at the cost of international brands.
Now, let's talk about another legacy brand that has big plans for this space. Tata Consumer entered the beauty retail market with their online platform first and are planning to expand into the offline space this year. The fine balance between high expenses and, if successful, the directly proportional higher AOVs is what Tata Consumer will have to balance with these new plans. So I asked our next guest, Dharmarajan K from Tata Click, to explain. Could you elaborate a little bit about how different the unit economics are for offline retail, beauty and personal care store as opposed to an online retail store in India?
To be honest, the challenge is not so much on profitability. There is a strong business case for expansion on the offline side. I don't see any challenge on per square feet productivity at all. And that is not the constraint or the current challenge that we have to solve for. Today, as a country, our current challenge is the availability of retail spaces. It is so concentrated on metros and tier 1. Our ability to enter into tier 2, tier 3 and availability of good quality retail spaces, aggregated retail spaces will be the challenge. The challenge will not be so much on unit economics.
What are your offline expansion plans?
We are already sort of ready to open about 2-3 stores within this quarter itself. And there is a plan to open large number of stores in the next 3 to 5 years.
What is the average store size?
We would be looking at anything between 1,500 to 3,000 square feet.
Are there any particular brand partnerships that you guys are working with, or are you bringing in any international players in the market? I ask because, again, Sephora is bringing in Rare Beauty. They're planning to launch it sometime soon. And Rare Beauty is a huge brand, right? So can we expect something similar from Tata Click?
Yeah. See, these partnerships you will get to see across the board. It will not be restricted to one player, one platform. Today, we are in conversation with almost 7 or 8 really large beauty brands across the globe to bring them here. Some who have already have a certain amount of demand basis different metrics. Like for example, Google search is a proxy of a prominence of a certain brand which is not present in India, but people in the country are searching for that brand. Those are some of the indicators through which we go out and reach some of these brands and try and get them in. Having said that, you would still have about 70% of the business, at least in the country, will come in from those top 100 beauty brands, which will typically be available across all the players.
The business of beauty is more lucrative than one gave it credit in India in the past. But a business is about making money. And our next guest has invested in the business. Whirlinvest invested in Purple.com, the second largest beauty marketplace in the country. Purple.com caters to the tier 2, 3, and 4 cities heavily and has more affordably priced products. Let's find out how the economics of beauty retail business works in India. Welcome, Arjun. Could you tell us about the profit margins and the numbers? And also, it would be great if you could touch upon all the 4 retail channels, because at this point of time, the way things are developing, it seems like offline is where the gold is at. But do you agree with that? Do you not agree with that?
So at the start, any investor you ask about beauty personal care, the first thing that will come up is very high gross margins. Now, this industry has fortunately been endowed with gross margins regardless of price point, which is very healthy. And that gives you so much room to operate a business and build brands, which creates enormous amount of profitability. The typical gross margin for this industry should be at 70%, 70%, which is way higher than most other FMCG categories. Now, if you're a luxury brand, this could go up to 80, 85, even 90%. If you are a more accessible brand, this could come down to 60%. But very rarely would you find a beauty personal care brand which is operating less than 60% of gross margin. And to compare and contrast this, in the food FMCG world, a great gross margin is 40%. So you're living and breathing at a very nice place in the margin pie if you're in beauty personal care. But alongside this comes building brands. So beauty personal care, as we have experienced over the last decades, have spent a lot on building brands. Typically, you would see a lot of celebrities, you'd see a lot of ads as these brands get built out. They're able to do this because when you sit at 70+% gross margin, you're able to invest so much more in brand building. And that's how these brands have been created over time. Beauty has been about establishing why this category needs to exist, which is providing content, routines, reasons, and regimens why you need to use these products, which Indians never used for so many years. Beauty, if done right and as it evolves, will have significantly greater margins than personal care because fundamentally these operate at even higher gross margins. They operate at a consumer set which is able to pay even higher than what personal care would do. And hence those margins should be very, very healthy at all levels.
What are the retailer margins for marketplaces?
Retailer margins, depending on the brands, can range anywhere from 20 to 30%.
All right. Last question. I wanted to understand from you, from a VC's perspective, how do you see Reliance's foray into the premium beauty retail is going to have an impact on the overall market of beauty in India?
Good question. So from an investor's perspective, Reliance opening up premium beauty stores in India is a very positive phenomenon because it enables luxury beauty brands to be created out of India and gain access to distribution. I think the consumer ultimately today, especially the premium one, is starting to recognize Indian brands made in India for India and not shying away from Indian brands, only looking at international and foreign brands, which are not necessarily made for Indians. And so from that perspective, it's a very positive development for luxury retail to open in India and the beauty industry. This should enable more luxury brands to be created in India for India. Today, I can think of two which have been obvious. One is Forest Essential and second is Kama Ayurveda. They had to go through the hard job of opening up their own stores, go through the hard job of creating their brands over the better part of the last decade. Now, with such forays of Reliance and others catering to this luxury audience, you should see more action in the industry.
So I'm hearing all good things, no challenges.
Challenges remain in terms of competition. I think today, if you ask me versus 3 years ago, the beauty industry is brutal when it comes to the number of competitors out there. Most niches of some relative scale have been filled by a brand of resonance. And so you really have to bring a unique value proposition, a sharp brand, and sharp communication to the table if you want to play.
One of the primary reasons why every consumer company, and honestly at this point it looks like every consumer company, is investing in beauty retail and especially focusing on the offline stores is the high margins. The business is lucrative and the value to volume ratio is very high. The value to volume ratio means, or translates rather, to a relatively high value at a very small package and very small volume. Because of the nature of the products, one is able to generate very high sales per square feet or gross margins per square feet, especially when compared to most other FMCG categories. Beauty retailers provide an assortment of products that is not available in grocery retail. Grocery retail will probably contain personal care such as hair care and oral care, but it will rarely contain beauty, especially premium color cosmetics. There was a clear gap of demand and supply in the market, and beauty retailers have finally realized that this gap is extremely profitable. While the rentals, employees, inventory management all add up to the expenses of the beauty retailer, all of them are taking on this formidable model of offline retail because of the very high gross margins per square feet. Add to that the frequency of repeat purchase, and you have got yourself a golden goose, which keeps on giving. Reliance's foray into the beauty retail market almost seems like the most obvious thing now. While the master disruptor is creating waves with its new store, the truth is the battle of the beauty retail war of India started much before Reliance's entry. However, in which direction it is likely to go and who will end up coming on top amongst so many players remains to be seen. Who knew beauty is attracting such big bucks? You have been listening to the Morning Brief podcast brought to you by the Economic Times. And I'm your host, Shobori Das. And a big thank you to our guests. A shout out to the team that helped put the episode together, our sound engineer, Indranil Bhattacharya, our producer, Surohini Jain, and executive producers, Anirban Chaudhary, Anupriya Nair, and Arjit Barman. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Morning Brief podcast on your favorite podcast platform to make sure you don't miss any episodes that we drop on every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Thank you for listening in. All clips used in the episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.